Hello there and welcome to another episode of We Need to Talk About ... Once again, I am your humble host, the Big Daddy D, David Mabley, and what I need is a jolly good smack bottom.
And I am Luke Murphy, and I have an odd craving for a certain sugary-based cereal.
And this is our second look at the Peter Cushing Doctor Who films from the 1960s. Now, if you haven't watched our review yet of the first film, Doctor Who and the Daleks, then please click on the link in the video description below and watch that first so that you're all caught up on the history of these films.
For this episode, we are looking at the second Doctor Who film from Amicus Productions, a big budget adaptation of the second Dalek serial that started on television in November of 1964, the Dalek Invasion of Earth. This time, with more money in the budget to play with thanks to a certain well-known breakfast cereal, the evil silver pepper pots are on the very streets of London itself, emerging eerily from the waters of the River Thames, barking exterminate and either shooting or enslaving squirming humans as part of a plot that fellow space Nazis, the First Order, would copy nearly 50 years later.
Welcome to We Need to Talk About ... Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD. Peter Cushing returned as Doctor Who for the sequel, and Roberta Tovey reprised her role as Susan, something that Cushing had insisted on. But this time a new character was introduced, Doctor Who's niece, Louise. What happened to Ian and Barbara from the previous film is anybody's guess, as they aren't mentioned at all.
Like in the original television serial, the Daleks pursue the Doctor, his companions, and a handful of survivors across the streets of London. The Daleks are planning to tunnel through to the Earth's core, whereupon they will destroy it with a bomb. This will then be replaced with a device enabling the aliens to pilot the planet like a giant spacecraft.
That sounds familiar.
The Daleks might have been able to destroy London, but they couldn't destroy capitalism. The film was part financed by the Quaker Oats Company, then makers of the Sugar Puffs cereal. In return for an exclusive merchandising deal as a result of this, several posters for Sugar Puffs are visible during the movie, an early, at least for a British film, example of product placement.
Oh, shit. I should point out that other sugary-based cereals are available.
Anyway, on to the plot, shall we? The opening of the film sees Police Constable Tom Campbell failing to stop several men doing over a jewellery shop. And so he runs into what appears to be a police box to call for backup. But what he enters is the TARDIS, just as the eccentric Doctor Who, together with his niece Louise and granddaughter Susan, as they are about to depart for the future. Really, I mean, it's a wonder that something like this didn't happen more often. I mean, it wouldn't occur again until an unfortunate copy did the same in the 1980 story Logopolis, Tom Baker's last story.
Hello there.
Yes, we'll get to you at some point, Tom. Promise.
So, PC Tom passes out, and when he comes to again, he is informed by Doctor Who that they're on their way to the year 2150 AD. No, seriously, why? Is it a good year? Is something significant going to happen? No idea. It's just a random year that we're going to.
Upon arriving in London in the year 2150, they find a desolate landscape of ruined buildings. It transpires that the Daleks, whom Doctor Who and Susan encountered in the previous film, have invaded the Earth and ravaged the planet. Some of the survivors have formed a resistance movement, while those captured have either been taken to provide forced labour at the Dalek mining complex in Bedfordshire, or they've been turned into brainwashed, PVC-clad, motorcycle-helmeted zombie robo-men that look like a Poundland-level Judge Dredd.
After the TARDIS gets buried under a pile of rubble from a collapsing building, Doctor Who and Tom become separated from Louise and Susan when they're captured by a squad of Robo-Men. As they are rounded up with some of the other prisoners that the Robo-Men have found, one of them tries to make a run for it, but the Daleks quickly kill him. In fact, the stuntman actually broke his leg when he fell off the roof, but still managed to complete the shot. Jackie Chan would have been proud of that.
Exterminate!
previous film, Ian used his cigarette lighter to stop the doors of a Dalek prison cell from closing, and this time the Doctor uses a comb to release the cell's lock. At first it seems that the Daleks haven't learned anything about their prison cell since the last film, but this turns out to be a test where the Daleks actually want their captives to escape in order to test their suitability for robotization.
Meanwhile, one of the survivors, Wyler, takes Louise and Susan to a resistance base in a London underground station, where they meet other rebels, including David and the wheelchair-bound Dortmund, who is the resistant leader. Dortmund, who wonderfully describes the Daleks as motorised dustbins, suggests disguising some of the rebels as Robomen in order to get into the Dalek spaceship. From there, they will use his homemade bombs to destroy it from the inside.
Yeah, indeed. It's a little hard to believe that the Daleks managed to invade the Earth, considering that they come to bits so easily. I mean, one of them blows up by just being pushed down a ramp.
During the battle, Doctor Who and Tom are freed, but whilst the Doctor is able to escape with David, Tom and Louise become trapped on the spaceship. Like Ian in the first film, Tom is very much the hero in this story. He's brave and courageous. Even whilst in this strange world, he still acts like a police officer, fighting for the plight of the downtrodden and oppressed, and making sure that no one is left behind, even at the risk of his own life. Having said that, like Ian, Tom is still the comic relief during the film. In this one particular scene, Tom disguises himself as a Robo-Man and then tries to fit in with the rest of them. I absolutely love this scene. This is one of my favourite scenes in the entire film, and it's a fantastic showcase of how good Bernard Cribbins is at doing physical comedy. After the attack fails, Wyler returns to the base where Dortmund and Susan are waiting and tells him that he saw Doctor Who escape. They decide to go to the outskirts of London and hide there until the rebels can regroup. Then they depart and commandeer a van, but when more Daleks arrive, Dortmund sacrifices himself so that the others can escape. Wyler and Susan are unable to get too far away, however, as the Dalek spaceship is sent after them. They are then forced to abandon the vehicle and make a run for it, just before the van is destroyed with a laser. From comparing this film version to the television version, you can see where that extra sugar puff money was spent. After escaping from the spaceship, Doctor Who and David evade the Daleks and return to the now deserted underground station. They assume that Wyler and Susan have gone to Bedfordshire to investigate the mining operation and decide to follow them. Hiding on the Dalek spaceship, Tom and Louise manage to escape when the craft lands by going through a waste disposal chute. Lovely. Finding themselves in the mining complex, they are attacked by a Robo-Man, but are saved by one of the prisoners, Conway, who hides the couple in a tool shed. Wyler has injured his leg whilst running away from the exploding van, so when he and Susan come across two women that make clothes for the human slaves in the mines, Susan asks them to provide her and Wyler with shelter overnight, whilst they plan their next move.
Where are you heading?
The Daleks mine in Bedfordshire.
I thought you said Watford.
Well, Grandfather won't stay there, will he, when he finds it full of Daleks? I think he'll go on to the mine. He's bound to be curious.
However, it transpires that the two women have informed the Daleks that they are keeping Wyler and Susan with them, as the Daleks promise them more food as a reward for information leading to their capture. It's a situation that many of us would question if we would do the same thing. I mean, these two women, they're not evil, they're not doing anything bad, they're starving, they haven't got any food, and the way they see it is that Wyler and Susan will go into the mines anyway. In their mind, they've done the right thing, and it does make you question if we found ourselves in a similar situation, would we do the same thing?
As Susan and Wyler are being escorted to the Daleks' mine control centre, Doctor Who and David meet up with a black marketeer called Broccoli, who would probably sell his own mother if he got a decent price for her. Broccoli has no allegiance to either side and will happily work with either humans or Daleks if it means he gets something out of it. However, Broccoli agrees to smuggle the two men into the complex, where by chance he leads them to the tool shed where Tom and Louise are hiding.
The reunited TARDIS crew then talk with Conway over the Daleks' plan, and it turns out from looking at blueprints of the mine that there is an old shaft leading to a convergence between the planet's magnetic poles. Realising that an explosion at this point would release enough energy to draw the metallic Daleks into the Earth's core, Doctor Who asks Tom and Conway to attempt to deflect the bomb, whilst Louise and David help the prisoners to get away from the mine. But in what is probably the best and most satisfying scene of the film, Broccoli betrays Doctor Who and leads a group of Daleks to him. But as the Doctor is being led away, Broccoli realises all too late that he has been double-crossed by the Daleks. He tries in vain to escape, but the Daleks open fire on Broccoli, killing him.
I told you he'd be here, didn't I?
As Tom and Conway work in the mine shaft to alter the bomb's trajectory, they come across another worker, Craddock, but realise all too late that he is also a Robo-Man. Despite how helpful Conway has been to the TARDIS crew up to this point, he is not around to see the end credits, as he and Craddock fall to their deaths during the ensuing fight.
Tom uses timbers boarding up the old shaft entrance to create a deflecting ramp, then rushes back to the surface. Meanwhile, Doctor Who is taken to the mine control room where he is reunited with Susan and Wyler. There he seizes the radio link to the Robo-Men and orders them to turn against their masters.
As the Robo-Men fight off the Daleks, Doctor Who escapes with Wyler and Susan while the slave workers flee from the mine. The Daleks quickly defeat the rebellion and release the bomb into the shaft, but the device is deflected and detonates at the pole convergence.
The angry Pepper Potts are then sucked to their doom by this realignment in the Earth's magnetic core, whilst their spaceship, having just taken off, is brought crashing down onto the mine and explodes.
With the Daleks finally defeated and the humans freed from their slavery in order to rebuild their world, the TARDIS crew prepare to return back to the present day. But Tom asks the Doctor that he be taken back a few minutes before the burglary occurred.
Upon arriving back in his own time, Tom knocks out the thieves and then drives them away in their own getaway car, heading for the police station and an anticipated promotion. With a huge beaming smile on his face, Tom waves goodbye to the Doctor and his family as the film comes to an end.
And that brings us to the part where we ask ourselves, what have we watched here? Well, the plot of the movie follows that of the TV serial sort of rather closely. The TARDIS team split up to sort of their various little teams, and they make their way to the Dalek mine in Bedfordshire, dodging Daleks and patrols of Robo-Men. But there are a few omissions. I mean, the romantic subplot between Susan and David that took place in the original television version has been omitted from the film for obvious reasons. I mean, in the TV story, they were of similar age. Both Susan and David being in their, I would say, late teens. Whilst in the movie version, David is in his mid-20s and Susan's around about 13. In fact, Susan and David actually hardly share any screen time together in the movie at all.
In fact, the TV version of the Dalek Invasion of Earth was Susan's last appearance in Doctor Who for a number of years. Her love for David leaves her torn between wanting to be with him and with that of looking after her grandfather. The romance with David does seem to come from nowhere, as even in the beginning of the story she's getting into trouble by childishly climbing up a wall and spraining her ankle, yes, again, which prompts the Doctor to tell her that what she needs is a jolly good smacked bottom.
It's awfully swollen.
Well, that settles it then.
Yes,
you need to stay here.
We shall be as quick as we can. And you bathe that ankle. What you need is a jolly good smack bottom. Come on.
If I hear any more language like that from you, young lady, you're in for a jolly good smack bottom.
So to go from this on to kissing a boy and then the two of them talking about getting married is a little odd. Still, despite this oddness, the moment where the Doctor says goodbye to Susan is genuinely an emotional one. William Hartnell was sad to see Carol Ann Ford go. He'd come to love her and treat her as if she was his own granddaughter. So the chances are that a lot of the emotions that the Doctor was showing on screen were for real.
During all the years, I've been taking care of you. You in return have been taking care of me.
Grandfather, I belong with you.
Not any longer, Susan. You're still my grandchild. and always will be. But now, you're a woman too. I want you to belong somewhere, to have roots of your own. With David, you'll be able to find those roots and live normally like any woman should do. Believe me, my dear, your future lies with David, and not with a silly old buffer like me. One day, I shall come back. Yes, I shall come back. Until then, there must be no regrets, no tears, no anxieties. Just go forward in all your beliefs and prove to me that I am not mistaken in mine. Goodbye, Susan. Goodbye, my dear.
The film misses out this dramatic moment entirely, and instead Susan ends up spending most of her time with Wyler, who starts off the film as very gruff, a very stern character, but throughout the film you see his caring and warm side come out as he becomes very, very protective of Susan, like she was his own family, which, you know, is lovely to see. So yes, you don't get the dramatic moment of Susan leaving, but you actually get this, which is arguably, I would think, much nicer.
There isn't any sneaking around in the sewers and avoiding alligators either, which was present in the original television serial. And to be honest, that is probably just as well. It seems to be that whenever there's an underground sequence during a Dalek story, it causes the pacing to suffer. Also, it was rather obvious in the TV version that those alligators were in fact baby ones. There's also no scene where Barbara uses events from history to trick the Daleks into believing they're about to be attacked.
This revolt is timed to start almost immediately. As in the case of the Indian Mutiny, which I'm sure...
Indian Mutiny! We are the masters of India!
I was talking about Red Indians, in disguise. The plan will run parallel with the Boston Tea Party. Naturally, you already have information about this.
Wait! Why have I not been informed of this?
There has been no information.
Good. That means the first part of the plan is a success. Now, I warn you. General Lee and the 5th Cavalry are already forming up to attack from the north side of the crater. The second wave, Hannibal's forces, will of course come in from the southern Alps. The third wave...
Attention! Attention! Mobilize defense forces!
Mainly because A, Barbara isn't in the film, and B, her replacement, Louise, doesn't really do anything at all.
The obligatory monster of the week doesn't make it to the film either. This was the Sliver. Not the most well-known monsters in Doctor Who. This was introduced in episode 5 of the TV serial, a sort of pet for the Black Dalek. It lasted all of 10 minutes in the episode, if that. Wasn't particularly very well realised, served no function in the overall plot of the story, and thankfully was never seen again. Joining the likes of the Mechanoids, the Crotons, the Monoids, to name but a few monsters that have only appeared on screen once.
The loss of the amount of the padding that was in the television serial does make for a film that is very well paced. With an 81-minute running time, it's not that much longer than the first film. So again, it's still not quite feature length. The television version was quite grim in places, and although the film version is more colourful, it still does manage to portray the downfall of humanity in a way that embodies the scale of H.G. Wells' The War of the Worlds, in a way that Doctor Who couldn't really portray up until this point. It has more scope and size than the original and a lot more action, although there is still a good amount of comedy in there as well. For these reasons, many Doctor Who fans may actually prefer the film version of this story rather than its original television version.
Like Ian in the previous film, this is really Tom's story about how he develops as a character and deals with the strange and alien threat that has been forced upon him. And he does get a very satisfying ending when his adventure with the Doctor ends and he returns to his own time, now with the obvious knowledge of what happens at the start of the film. Peter Cushing did actually have a bout of illness during filming, So some of the script was rewritten on the fly, so that Tom ended up doing some more of what possibly the Doctor would have been doing in the original Doctor script.
The film does improve on a few things from the TV serial. Firstly, the look of the Robo-Men in the film is that of shock troopers, you know, all in black helmet with a reflective visor so you can't see their eyes. It's a striking look, as opposed to, well, this in the TV serial, which is not like that at all. But at the end of the day, TV budgets, what can you do?
The look of the Dalek saucer in the movie is probably the main highlight, something that could never be fully realised on the small screen. Here, though, we see a much expanded set for the Dalek saucer, add on the model work for when the saucer is in flight, and it certainly puts the TV version to shame. Again, there's that Sugarpuff sponsorship coming to good use.
Again, the film was popular with audiences, but not so much with the critics, and unfortunately this time it wasn't a big hit at the box office either. So plans to make a third movie, which was going to be an adaptation of Terror Nation's third Dalek serial, The Chase, never came to fruition. The film has a great cast though, and there are a lot of familiar faces in the film.
Ray Brooks was cast as David. He was advertised in the trailer for the film as the man with the knack, which was a reference to the film The Knack and How to Get It, which he starred the year before in 1965 alongside Michael Crawford. In the same year as this film came out, he also starred in Ken Loach's Cathy Come Home. This was followed with various TV roles, The Avengers, Danger Man, Doom Watch, film appearances, but he will always be best remembered as the narrator of Mr. Ben.
As if by magic, the shopkeeper appeared.
"Can I help you, sir?" he asked.
Andrew Keir was cast as Wyler. He was a familiar face to TV and film audiences in such productions as A Night to Remember and Cleopatra. Although he's probably best remembered for the Hammer productions that he starred in. Pirates of Blood River in 1962, Dracula, Prince of Darkness in 1966, The Viking Queen in 1967, and Blood from the Mummy's Tomb in 1971.
However, his most famous role for Hammer was taking on the part of Professor Bernard Quatermass in Quatermass and the Pit, again a big screen version of the BBC serial, which we have mentioned on this very programme quite a few times. I mean, Life Force, Doctor Who Spearhead from Space. I'm sure we might cover that film at some point because, quite frankly, it's brilliant. I don't need any excuse to talk about Quatermass.
Taking on the small role of Broccoli was Philip Murdoch, a Welsh actor who worked extensively across television, film and theatre, from the RSC to that episode of Dad's Army. Yes, that episode.
Right, what you like, you're not going to win this war.
Oh, yes, we are.
Oh, no, you're not.
Oh, yes, we are. Whistle while you work. Hitler is at work. He's half army, so's his army. Whistle while you... Your name will also go on the list. What is it?
Don't tell him, Pike.
Pike.
Maddock also played Magua in a 1971 BBC production of The Last Mohicans. He appeared in five episodes of The Avengers during the 1960s. He took the role of DCI Noel Bain in the series A Mind to Kill, which was produced from 1994 to 2002. And that was a series that was filmed in both English and Welsh. So, you know, that's really, really good detective series. Dalek Invasion of Earth 2150 AD is also the start of an incredibly long association with Doctor Who, as he appeared many times across the 1960s and 1970s. He appeared in two Second Doctor serials, The Crotons, where he played Elic, a high-ranking member of the Gon Society. Avoid the Crotons like the plague. It's awful. It really, really is. Not a very good story. He was also in the War Games, however, where he played the villainous alien warlord. And in the 1970s, he appeared in two Fourth Doctor serials, The Brain of Morbius and The Power of Kroll. The Brain of Morbius is wonderful. It is absolutely brilliant. It is basically Doctor Who does Frankenstein, and Philip Maddock plays the Dr. Frankenstein character. In this case, the villainous and quite mad Dr. Solon, who very, very quickly is trying to implant the brain of a long-dead Time Lord into the body of a monster, and various other bits and pieces happen. Lots of bits from sort of Doctor Who lore actually end up in this, starting this story. One rather infamous bit where the Doctor is locked in a mind duel with Morbius, and you see faces that have come to now mean that it could be the Doctor remembering past lives at the time as child and what have you. Back then I always thought, well, no, that's the Doctor's past selves, those are Morbius's past selves, and somebody's just taken it massively out of context, I think. But hey ho, that's how I would have done it. Somebody else has done it the different way. So, but the Brain of Morbius is really, really good and well worth a watch, and certainly a Tom Baker story that I would like to cover in the near future. It's actually one of the very, very first Doctor Who stories that I got on VHS. The one that I bought myself. I got one for Christmas one time, and then I went out with some Christmas money and bought one myself. It was the Brain of Morbius, and it scared the pants out of me.
Which brings us nicely on to the TARDIS crew for this movie. Jill Curzon, who takes over from Ian and Barbara, appeared in numerous TV roles in the 60s, with appearances in The Champions, The Saint, and Adam Adamant Lives. She also appeared in a few films, but this was probably the most high-profile performance in her career.
Roberta Tovey, who appeared in both movies as Susan, Doctor Who's granddaughter, appeared in numerous roles in film and TV during the 1960s. For example, Runaway Railway and The Beast in the Cellar. Don't worry, I've never heard of them either.
And of course there is Bernard Cribbins, who is a national treasure. He started his professional career at the Arts Theatre on the West End in A Comedy of Errors in 1956. And for the past 50 years he's been a constant on film, television, and even the UK music charts. He had 3 top 40 singles in the 60s. He appeared in 2 Carry On films, Carry On Jack and Carry On Spying. Well, okay, officially he appeared in 3, but if Carry On Columbus is going to be omitted from the official DVD box set, who are we to argue? And he also appeared in the original 1967 version of the James Bond film Casino Royale. Wow, he really does get about a bit, doesn't he? And for more on that particular movie, please see episode 2 of our show, where we took a look at said film.
What's you, pussycat?
No! Cribbins is probably best known to people of our generation for his contributions to the series Jackanory, where he appeared in more episodes than any other storyteller. He appeared in 114 between 1966 and 1991. I'm in my early 40s now, and I still want Bernard Cribbins to read me a bedtime story. Cribbins replaces his fellow Carry On star Roy Castle as the heroic yet rather bumbling psychic role, doing some excellent physical comedy when he tries to fit in with the rest of the Robo Men, but he also has a lot of fun doing the sort of action heroics he was never really asked to perform in any of his other work. And of course, like many, this certainly wouldn't be the last time that Cribbins would cross paths with the Time Lord. Oh, damn these onions.
Right, yes. Bigger on the inside. Do you like it? I thought it'd be cleaner. Cleaner?
And last, but certainly not least, there is Peter Cushing. Well, what hasn't Peter Cushing been in? From Sherlock Holmes to Baron Frankenstein. From Winston Smith to Grand Moff Tarkin. Cushing had a career that spanned 6 decades across television, film, stage and radio. During that time he's killed more vampires than Buffy, outsmarted Moriarty, fought Daleks, travelled to the Earth's core and verbally bitch-slapped Darth Vader whilst blowing up Alderaan. Yep, Chuck Norris has got nothing on this guy.
No matter the role, Peter Cushing never, ever gave a performance that was less than 100%. And in some cases, he wasn't even paid. Spending the first 3 years of his acting career in Rep Theatre, Cushing made his screen debut in The Man in the Iron Mask in 1939. A high point in the early Hollywood part of his career was being cast in A Trump at Oxford alongside Laurel and Hardy in 1940. Now, unfortunately, these early successes didn't lead to more work, and due to the outbreak of World War II, that certainly didn't help. I mean, at one point he was forced to work designing ladies' headscarves at a Macclesfield-based silk manufacturer to make ends meet. In the autumn of 1946, after the war ended, Cushing unsuccessfully auditioned for the part of Paul Varell in a stage production of the play Born Yesterday that was being staged by the famed actor and director Sir Laurence Olivier. Now, he wasn't cast because he insisted he could not perform in an American accent. After Cushing attempted the accent and failed, Olivier replies, "Well, I appreciate you for not wasting my time. I shall remember you." Nearing middle age and finding it increasingly harder to make a living in acting, Cushing actually began to consider himself to be a failure.
In 1947, Laurence Olivier sought him out when he was adapting Hamlet into a film. Cushing's wife Helen pushed him to pursue the role. Far from being deterred by Cushing's unsuccessful audition the year before, Olivier remembered the actor well and was happy to cast him. But the only character left unfilled was the relatively small part of the foppish courtier, Osric. Cushing accepted the role, and Hamlet, in 1948, marked his British film debut. Hamlet went on to win the Academy Award for Best Picture and earned Cushing praise for his performance. Also appearing in the film was Christopher Lee, who would eventually become a close friend and frequent co-star with Cushing.
Yeah, and Cushing appeared in 22 films for Hammer, playing Baron Frankenstein 6 times, Dr. Van Helsing 5 times. He played Sherlock Holmes in both film, the Hammer version of The Hound of the Baskervilles, and on television. His performance as Winston Smith in 1984, which was adapted by Nigel Neal, in 1954, led to questions being asked about its suitability in Parliament. His final film role came in 1986 with Biggles, An Adventure in Time, which I have a soft spot for. Mabbers, that could be an interesting candidate for us to look at. Cushing died in 1994 after a long fight against prostate cancer.
Peter Cushing was actually offered the role of the Second Doctor, but it looked like William Hartnell was going to leave the show, but he actually turned the role down. Something that he would later say he deeply regretted. It's a bit awkward that the films depict such similar events to the one seen in William Hartnell's adventure, but there's probably a wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey explanation for that.
There is indeed, David. In fact, the biggest obstacle to Peter Cushing being Doctor Who is the fact that he's already canon. In Stephen Moffat's novelisation of The Day of the Doctor mentions that he knows Peter Cushing personally, and that Cushing made some rather inaccurate movies about some of his adventures. And the Doctor even mentions that he loaned Peter Cushing a waistcoat for the second film. The novel also mentions that Cushing's friendship with the Doctor explains how he managed to appear in Star Wars Rogue One several years after his death. In fact, allow me to read you some, if I will.
Well, I suppose I shouldn't be surprised that you've got the actual sort of novelisation, the proper adaptation of the show. Hang on a minute, what's going on here? Are you about to do a dramatic reading here, Luke?
Hello everyone, and welcome to Storytime with Luke. At the table, negotiations had entered their 9th hour, and both Kates looked ready to flop face down. Clara noticed that the Osgoods were taking a break with each other and appeared to be sharing the same inhaler, which surely presaged well for peace on Earth. The two younger, older, doctors were wandering about the shelves, fiddling with things and occasionally gossiping about some photographs of their various companions, which they found pinned to a notice board. There had been an ugly period when they discovered a VHS tape of the movie Daleks Invasion of Earth and insisted on watching it. They nearly derailed the negotiations by shouting, cheering and joining in, and then had spent the next hour calling each other Doctor Who and talking like Peter Cushing. Clara had a sinking feeling that her doctor might stick that way. "I love his bandy legs," he said, imitating Doctor Who's walk by making no apparent change at all. "I can tell," said the other one. "How?" When they'd found a DVD of the other movie, remastered, they tried to get the old man to join in, but he smiled and waved them away.
So, these films are canon, technically. But they're not always brought up in discussions about Doctor Who, and they can get easily forgotten about. They weren't easily available on home video for a good number of years, which certainly didn't help. I had heard of both of these movies, but it's only now we're reviewing them both for this show that I've actually watched them, and I rather enjoyed them both. Doctor Who's got a lot in common with another UK icon that's constantly changing his face, James Bond, who also has a couple of movies that are official but not quite canon as well, with Never Say Never Again and the aforementioned 1967 version of Casino Royale that we've covered here previously.
Okay, so both of the Peter Cushing Doctor Who movies, of which I have the Blu-rays here, they are family-friendly science fiction films to put on during any rainy Sunday afternoon at a brisk 80 minutes each. They are also a lot easier to sit through rather than the 3+ hours you would need to watch through the original black and white television series. I would probably hazard a guess, like many, I actually saw the film versions before actually seeing the TV versions. So for years, these were the original Dalek stories for me. So, and now we have nice shiny Blu-ray sets, which I think have actually been out for a couple of years. So they're not brand new, but they are certainly digitally restored, remastered picture, etc. They look really, really good. I believe that both of these films are also are now available on BritBox, the new streaming service from the BBC and ITV. So perhaps these two films will come up in Doctor Who related discussions more often.
Detective Inspector Tom Campbell, OBE. Thank you, lads.
Well, hello there. As you can see, it's been a while. It's been about, what, roughly 18 months?
Roughly around about that, yeah. But we are actually in one another's company again.
Yes, we are. We're back in our natural habitat, i.e. the pub. So we'll make this quick because we have got some serious catching up and some serious drinking to do.
Also, the fact is that you say our natural habitat is the pub. It really does give a false impression about us. Actually, it really does give a false impression about us. Yes, well, what a year it has been.
It really has. And I do think it's quite fitting that we started off lockdown reviewing Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And we're finishing lockdown, hopefully, touch wood, please, also reviewing Doctor Who.
Yes.
We've done a bit of Doctor Who now, and I think...
Which is all my fault, really.
Yeah. You're a bad influence on me.
Godfrey Ho. That's all.
Fair enough. Well, it's funny you should mention that, because
it's not happening.
Because we've done Doctor Who for quite a while. I think now it's time to change genres a bit. Maybe it's time to return to the chop socket genre.
I'm fine with that.
Maybe it's time to return to the martial arts movie genre.
I am fine with that.
We do have a short list of films that we want to cover on here. A short list that just seems to get longer and longer. Hopefully by the time we next bring an episode of We Need to Talk About ... here, we'll be back in the bunker.
Yes.
But we'll have
which has been hermetically sealed for the past 18 months.
It has.
Genuinely COVID-free.
Yeah.
So that'll be nice.
It will.
We went in deep clean and what have you, so it'll be fine.
It just smells strongly of lemon now for some reason.
Which is not a bad smell, to be honest with you. It's lemon scented. I mean, it's perfectly fine. I'm fine with this. Yes. So we've just finished doing sort of Daleks Invasion of Earth 2158.
We've done the two Peter Cushing Doctor Who movies. For many people, this would have been their first exposure to Doctor Who.
Certainly for those two stories, because I think, as I mentioned, I probably saw the movies before I watched the TV version of it.
So, and this was during the time as well where the BBC, in their infinite wisdom, would not only refuse to repeat episodes of Doctor Who, but they would actually destroy the tapes shortly after broadcasting. Which makes me just want to have a TARDIS just so I can go back in time and stop that from happening.
Well, yes. Considering sort of some of the early stories that are missing, presumed, like I don't know, Marco Polo, Evil of the Daleks, various other bits and pieces.
Certain parts of the Highlanders, certain parts of the Underwater Menace. which have started to get the animated treatment.
Yes, quite a few actually. Yeah. There's an animated version of Ian of the Daleks coming out September time.
Yeah.
So, which is looking really nice.
I'm sure at one point we will return back to the world of Doctor Who.
Yes.
As we've mentioned various times, there's a lot of Tom Baker stories that we want to cover.
Absolutely.
But I think we don't like to sort of settle into the comfort zone a little too much. We like to swap genres.
Yeah.
So I think a change of genre.
We're going to do something different for a bit.
Yeah, it's definitely on the card. So what that'll be, we will have to wait and see. I'm just so pleased that we've got the chance to be together again, rather than doing this remotely.
Actually, in real life, in the company of friends. It's not Josh on camera. Being cameraman this time, we've sent him down.
We've sent him down to get around the drinks. It's the lovely Sophie that's currently doing the filming for us, which probably explains why the filming is of a better quality than when it was.
Yeah.
Oh, hiya, Josh. Sorry, we weren't talking about you already.
No, that's all right.
Yeah, sure.
Go on. Get down here. Thank you.
That's it. Thank you, Jeeves.
Yeah.
Right, as you can see, we have some drinking to catch up on, so I think it's about the right time to round this episode up.
Yes. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for bearing with us during these interesting COVID-related times.
Please stick with us because there is more to come. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, make sure you click on the little bell to be notified when there's a new video.
Stuff happening around here with bits and pieces.
Little bits and pieces. Follow us on Twitter, follow us on Facebook, and until we meet up again, which hopefully will be in the bunker, I'd just like to say that I am the Big Daddy D, David Mabley.
I am Luke Murphy.
Thank you very much for catching this episode of We Need to Talk About ... and we will catch you again next time, my friends.
You need to remember to turn off the security measures in the bunker.
What, just in case?
Well, the attack lasers and everything.
Oh, I thought
the Ebola virus.
I thought you switched that off.
No, I didn't switch it off. You switched it off.
No, you switched it off.
I said to you, make sure you switch it off.
I thought I told you to switch it off.
Oh, shit.
So this is where COVID came from.
Didn't we get Will to be a cleaner?
Well, that was a fucking mistake, wasn't it?
In fact, I've not seen Will for about 18 months.
Someone said that would be a good thing.
Yeah, it probably was. Hi, Will, if you're still alive, we love you. Yes, okay. This might. I think we better go to the bunker and just check if the anti-human remains. What are you talking about?
I think this might get awkward.
I think it might get very awkward. In fact, yeah, delete this. This is incriminating evidence. Stop.